Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the Swiss MLB Tuesday. We got 15 games on the board. It's a loaded night. I think I'm going to go through 6 or 7 of them in this video, as many as I can in the time I have. But whatever I don't get to, we'll go through on the live show tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We'll go through all 15 games. So if you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. As far as Monday night, I went 2-0. Nice little 2-0 night. It was a lighter slate, so only 2 bets, but I hit them both. And it was a bounce back because Sunday I went 2-4. I was so hot. Friday, Saturday had monster days, then got hit up on Sunday, 2-4. So bounce back with a 2-0 Monday. You'll love to see it. So yeah, MLB Tuesday. Let's get it started.
Welcome to the Swiss. The Swiss. Hey, get the Swiss.
First game on the list is actually Cubs-Orioles in Baltimore, but at this moment, at the time I'm recording this, I believe the Cubs pitcher is uncertain. I see a couple websites that say Imanaga, but it's not confirmed yet. MLB.com still says to be determined. Definitely looks like Dean Kramer is going to pitch for Baltimore. So I'm going to skip this one for now. We'll talk about it on the live show tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern time, but I'm not going to go and break down this whole game and then have the pitcher change. That's annoying as hell. So skip it for now. Moving right along to Cleveland at Detroit. Tigers are dogs at home here, plus 122. Total sitting at 8.5. We got Ben Lively on the mound for Cleveland. Kenta Maeda pitching for the Tigers. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got a lean on Cleveland here. 3.12 to 2.86 after 5 innings, so a slight lean after 5. Final score 5.16 to 4.52 Cleveland. So before we get into this matchup, let's look at some ROI numbers. Cleveland's definitely been more profitable than the Tigers this year, plus 15.3% on the season, minus 8.5% for the Tigers. As of late, though, I mean, last 10 games, Cleveland's minus 14.2%, and the Tigers are above 0. So lately, Detroit's been a better ticket to be holding than the Guardians, but the Tigers have not been doing their damage at home. Minus 16% ROI at home on the season, and they have not been profitable in the last 10 and the last 5 at home. So Tigers on the road has been a better ticket recently. So let's get into the numbers here, and we'll start with the Cleveland bats. As we know, Cleveland's been hitting all season. Last 30 days, top 10 lineup. Last 14 days, last 7 days, top 10 lineup. As far as their numbers on the road, kind of the same thing. Borderline top 10 lineup on the road this year. Last 30 days, top 10 road lineup. So Cleveland's been hitting. They've been hitting on the road. Now we get to their numbers against right-handed pitching, and it looks solid here. In the last 30 days, top 10 lineup. Last 7 days, top 10 lineup. So, okay, they've been getting to right-handed pitching. But then we look at their numbers against right-handed starters, and we start to see something here. The last 6 righty starters to pitch against Cleveland, 198 ERA and a 105 whip. So they haven't been getting to righty starters. They've been doing damage against righties out of the bullpens, but not against starters. You can see it here on the game logs. I mean, Eric Fetty, 6 innings, 1 run. Chris Flexen, 6 innings, 3 runs, just 7 base runners. Seth Lugo, 6 shutout. Alec Morris, 6 innings, 1 earned run, 6 base runners. Michael Wacha, 5 1/3. They actually got 9 base runners against Michael Wacha, but just 1 earned run. Grayson Rodriguez blanked him. Jose Barrios, I mean, they got 5 runs off him, but just 7 base runners. So even that wasn't a spanking. That was back on June 22nd as well. So we're talking about, what, 2.5, 3 weeks ago? So we're looking at a sizable sample size here. 6 righty starters in a row were able to pitch good games against this Guardians lineup, which brings us to Kenta Maeda. I think having his worst season as a professional baseball player on the year. 6.71 ERA, 152 whip. Last 4 starts, 868 and 182, so it doesn't even seem to be getting better. I will say he has been better at home in Detroit, though. Check this out. In his last 4 home starts, 229 ERA and a 107 whip. So, okay, Kenta Maeda has been better at home. But then when you look at his game logs, I mean, where are the home starts? June 22nd against the White Sox, that's not even good. 8 hits and 3 earned runs in less than 5 innings of work. Before that, the Nats, yeah, 1 earned run, but he only went 4 innings, 5 base runners. That's not even great. And then that's the only home starts we see here, and this chart goes all the way back to May 31st. So we've only seen 2 home starts recently, and one was decent. The other one wasn't even good. So, no, I don't really trust Kenta Maeda right now, if we're being honest. But there is something I like here for Kenta Maeda. It's his numbers against left-handed bats. 343 WOBA and a 144 whip. That's not completely terrible. Certainly much better than his numbers against righties. 406 WOBA against righties. The reason I'm bringing this up, Cleveland's projected to have 8 lefties in the lineup here. 8. Cleveland's the most lefty-heavy lineup in baseball this year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, including the first 6 hitters. So that's actually a positive for Kenta Maeda. He's been better against lefty bats. As far as the pitch mix, throws the slider, the splitter, and the four-seam fastball. Cleveland 9th, 12th, and 6th against those 3 pitches in the last 30 days. So that's a good look for Cleveland. As a whole on this side, I mean, I do like that Kenta Maeda has been slightly better at home, and I do like that he's been better against lefty bats, and I do like that the Cleveland lineup has been slumping against righty starters. I don't know if we can count on Kenta Maeda to throw a great game, but I think he's able to put together a formidable game, a decent start. How about that? 5 innings, 3 earned runs, maybe. I think we can count on him for that. On the other side, we got the Tigers bats, and as we know, the Tigers lineup has been terrible this year, but last 7 days, the Detroit Tigers, borderline top 5 lineup. 7 days is an insanely small sample size, but still, let's give him some credit. But like we were pointing out during the ROI section, it's been happening on the road, not at home. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 10 home lineup. They have not been hitting in Detroit. But then we take a look at their numbers against right-handed pitching, and same pattern here. Last 30 days, bottom 10 lineup versus righties. Last 14 days, bottom 5 lineup versus righties. But last 7 days, top 10 lineup versus right-handed pitching. So maybe things are turning around for the Tigers. Doesn't really seem to be happening against starters, though. The last 3 righty starters to pitch against Detroit, 2.55 ERA and a 1.25 whip. And if you pull up the game logs, I mean, they didn't touch Hunter Green. They didn't touch Bailey Ober. Didn't really get... Well, they actually got to Woods Richardson a little bit. Not really. They got to Griffin Canning a little bit. They did crush Carson Spears, and that might be skewing the numbers a bit. But as a whole, I'd say, looking at these game logs, this isn't terrible. There's a couple bad outings on here, but there are signs that the Tigers lineup might be waking up a little bit. Let's not go crazy. Which brings us to Ben Lively, who's been consistent as hell this year. 3.14 ERA, 1.16 whip on the season. Last 7 starts, last 3 starts, numbers look about the same as that. He's been solid on the road all year. 3.64 ERA and a 1.29 whip on the road this season. Last 3 road starts, last road start, numbers look about the same as that. And then you take a look at his game logs, and look how consistent this dude is. I mean, quality start, quality start, quality start. There's really only one bad start on here. June 16th on the road in Toronto. Other than that, I mean, all solid starts. And in fact, we see one gem in here, 5 shutout innings in Miami. So Ben Lively's been as solid as it gets in Major League Baseball this year. Something I noticed here with Ben Lively, though, look how many innings pitched he's thrown against bottom 10 lineups versus top 10 lineups. 34 2/3 innings pitched against bottom 10 lineups. Just 5 2/3 innings pitched against top 10 lineups on the season. Now, his numbers actually look better in those 5 2/3, but the point being, he's pitched against a lot more bottom 10 lineups than top 10 lineups, meaning we may come across a sell high spot on Ben Lively at some point. I don't know if against the Tigers is necessarily that spot, but at some point we should come across that. As far as his righty-lefty splits, he's definitely got much better numbers against lefty bats, which is nice here because the Tigers are projected to have 5 lefties in the lineup, including 3 of their first 5 hitters. So Tigers do have some key lefties in the lineup, and Ben Lively's been dominant against lefties. I like that. Also, Ben Lively's 2 main pitches, the sinker and the four-seam fastball, Detroit's 30th and 29th against those 2 pitches in the last 30 days. So I definitely like the look of that for Ben Lively as well. Overall, I do think we will find a really nice spot to fade Ben Lively, but against Detroit, even though they are showing signs of waking up, I can't trust them. I think Ben Lively should pitch fine here. As far as the bullpen matchup, no question the edge goes to Cleveland here. Even though the Guardians bullpen hasn't quite been the same recently, it's still miles better than what Detroit's bullpen has been doing. So no question, Cleveland's got the better bullpen. And offensively against bullpens, again, you got to give the edge to Cleveland here, but mostly based on how bad the Tigers offense has been in the late innings. In the last 14 days, last 30 days, this has pretty much been the worst offense in baseball, hitting off opposing bullpens. So definitely solid edge to the Guardians in the late innings here. As far as betting this game, tell me why we shouldn't take an under here. Cleveland has now failed to get to 7 consecutive righty starters. Keider Montero just blanked them tonight. Pitch into the 7th inning, no runs, just 3 hits. Keider Montero, they didn't touch him. Kenta Maeda has been bad, but even if he could hold Cleveland to just 3 runs through the first 5 innings, they should still stay under this total. Ben Lively should have 0 problems with the Tigers lineup. Cleveland got to rest their main arms from the bullpen too. So I like the Guardians to win a low-scoring game here. I'll say 3-1 Cleveland final score. Give him the under 8.5. I bet this one. Also, if you're looking for a player prop in this one, I might have a sneaky one here for you. Look how low Josh Naylor's expected WOBA numbers are against Kenta Maeda's pitch mix. This is shocking. I mean, because he's always at the top of these charts. He's having a monster season. It's because of the splitter. Josh Naylor has an expected WOBA of 188 against the splitter this year from right-handed pitchers. I think it might be a sneaky spot to take a Josh Naylor under. It's probably going to be juiced up because everyone's going to be betting his home run props against Maeda. Maybe a Josh Naylor under HRR, hits, runs, and RBIs. I couldn't find the line posted as I'm recording this, but it might be a sneaky spot to take a Josh Naylor under. Next up, we got a good game here. Dodgers on the road in Philadelphia. Phillies are minus 142 favorites at home. Total sitting at 8.5. Bobby Thriller is on the mound for the Dodgers. Zach Wheeler pitching for the Phillies. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. According to the model, we got a solid lean on the Phillies here. 3.74 to 2.38 Philadelphia. 5.92 to 4.24 Philadelphia. So before we get into this matchup, let's look at some ROI numbers. Philadelphia has been the more profitable team here, plus 5.9% on the season compared to minus 6.3% for the Dodgers. But neither of these teams have been profitable in the last 10 games. Both are significantly below zero. Phillies, as we know, they've been a solid home team this year, a plus 10% ROI on the season, but in the last 10 games, they're, again, below zero. So if you've been betting the Phillies lately, you're definitely taking losses. Meanwhile, on the Dodgers side, they're plus 3.5% on the road on the season. Last 10 games, last 5 games, above zero. So the Dodgers on the road have been a solid bet. So let's get into this one. Dodgers bats, top 5 lineup in the last 30 days. Last 14 days, top 10 lineup. Numbers looking solid here for the Dodgers bats across the board. As far as their numbers on the road, they've actually passed the New York Mets. They're the best road lineup in baseball on the season, and in the last 30 days, they're second across the board. Last 14 days don't look closer to average, but last 14 days is a crazy small sample size for home-away splits. As far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, looking solid. Last 30 days, this is a top 5 lineup against righties. Last 14 days, about the same. Last 7 days, back at 11th. So nothing to be concerned about there. Dodgers are hitting righties. The last 4 righty starters to pitch against the Dodgers, 5.50 ERA and a 161 whip. Last 2 righty starters, an even 7 ERA and a 167 whip. So they're getting to righty starters. And when you pull up the game logs, I like what I'm seeing here because there's a lot of good names on this list. Freddie Peralta, they got to him. Aaron Savali's a solid starter. They got to him. Zach Gallen, they got to him. Ryan Nelson, they actually struggled with, and same goes for Logan Webb. So there are a couple righties on this list that were able to pitch good games against the Dodgers, but as a whole, they've been pretty consistently getting to righty starters. That slump they were in against righties, that's 3-4 weeks ago now. That's in the past, which brings us to Zach Wheeler. Now, good news for Zach Wheeler is he's pitched great against the Dodgers. Since joining the Phillies, he's made 2 starts against the Dodgers. He's 1-0 with a 2.38 ERA and a 150 whip. 150 whip's a little high, so the Dodgers were able to get guys on base, but not really get them across. Zach Wheeler, as we know, having a Cy Young type season, 2.74 ERA, 0.99 whip on the year. Last 6 starts, last 3 starts, numbers look great. As far as his numbers at home, dominant. 1.67 ERA and an 0.87 whip at home, just really impressive. Same goes for the last 5 starts, last 5 home starts, last 2 home starts. Almost been untouchable at home this year. We pull up his game logs, and I mean, other than that weird Baltimore start where the Orioles just crushed him, he's been pretty dominant. You can see almost every single start on here is impressive. Zach Wheeler, he's been probably the most consistent pitcher in the NL this year. But then we get to his splits, and this is where we start to draw questions about Zach Wheeler. This is really the only argument you can make against him. He hasn't pitched against many good lineups. On the season, against top 10 lineups versus righties this year, just 18 1/3 innings pitched. He's thrown 47 innings pitched against bottom 10 lineups. So as great of a season Zach Wheeler's having right now, and I'm not trying to take credit away from him, he's been excellent. We haven't really seen him tested much. And when we have seen him tested against top 10 lineups, 5.89 ERA and a 142 whip. So he's actually struggled in the times where he has seen top 10 lineups. And we know the Dodgers are most definitely a top 10 lineup. Also, we know Zach Wheeler struggles with lefty bats. 3.16 WOBA and a 130 whip. Much, much worse than his numbers against righty bats. He's almost unhittable against righties. Dodgers are projected to have 4 lefties in the lineup, including Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Outman, and there's some dangerous lefties in this Dodgers lineup. Even though they're not a lefty-heavy lineup, they have some dangerous lefties in there. So I don't love the look of that for Wheeler. Also, his pitch mix. He throws the 4-seam fastball, the sinker, and the slider. Dodgers 9th, 7th, and 2nd against those 3 pitches in the last 30 days. So I know this sounds crazy to doubt Zach Wheeler at home, but I think the Dodgers are going to get to him. On the other side, we got the Philadelphia bats, and as I'm sure you've heard, trending in the wrong direction here. In the last 30 days, this is still a top 10 lineup, but in the last 7 days, 24th in WRC+, 24th in OPS, 24th in WOBA. So Phillies offensively definitely been struggling. As far as their numbers at home, I mean, we know this is a great home lineup. In the last 30 days, this is a top 5 lineup at home. Last 14 days, the numbers are dipping, but again, small sample size. Now we get to their numbers against right-handed pitching, and this is where it starts to get concerning if you're betting the Phillies here. In the last 30 days, 11th, 11th, 11th. Look at the last 7 days. This is a bottom 3 lineup in baseball against righties in the last 7 days. The last 6 righty starters to pitch against the Phillies, 3.68 ERA, 1.43 WHIP. And then look at the game logs. Spencer Schwellenbach couldn't get to him. Jameson Taillon, they didn't touch him. They scored 2 runs early, and then he pretty much blanked them for 5 straight innings. So since Harper and Schwarber went down, that was on June 28th, I believe, they saw Roddery Munoz and Yanni Chirinos. I mean, yeah, they got to him a little bit, but it's Roddery Munoz and Yanni Chirinos. Since then, Jameson Taillon blanked them. Spencer Schwellenbach blanked them. So I don't think we can trust this Phillies, and I was saying this on the live show the other day, I can't trust this Phillies lineup against a decent right-handed starter right now without those 2 guys in it. Which brings us to the question, can we trust Bobby Thriller? And, well, the good news is he pitched great against the Phillies last year. Made a start on June 10th against them last season. 6 innings pitched, no runs, just 3 hits. So that's a promising start for Bobby Miller, but let me look at his numbers on the season. I mean, he's got a 6.12 ERA, 160 WHIP. Last 3 starts, last 2 starts. I mean, he got hurt, then came back. Hasn't been very good. He's been especially bad on the road. He's got a 9.64 ERA and a 2.14 WHIP on the road this season. Not looking great. The good news for Bobby Miller is we're talking about a super small sample size here. He's only made 6 starts on the season, so the numbers look really concerning, but I mean, if he puts together 2 decent starts in a row, it will dramatically shift the numbers. It's a small sample size. Also, his last start was against Arizona, one of the hottest lineups in baseball as far as hitting righty starters, and he wasn't bad. 5 innings pitched, 7 base runners, 2 earned runs. Against Arizona right now, that's really not bad at all. Before that, the White Sox crushed him. Then he struggled in Coors Field, and then before that, we're back in April. That was before he got hurt. So again, we're talking about a very small sample size here with Bobby Miller. One thing I like here for Bobby Miller is one of his weaknesses is he struggles with lefty bats. Phillies are still projected to have 5 lefties in the lineup here, but without Harper and without Schwarber, they're missing their 2 superstar lefties. So, I mean, Bryson Stott, Brandon Marsh, I mean, those are dangerous bats. This lineup does not look the same with those 2 superstars in it. As far as his pitch mix, he throws the 4-seam fastball and the changeup. Phillies in the last 30 days, 18th and 20th and plummeting against those 2 pitches. Look, am I going to sit here and tell you Bobby Miller is going to go on the road in Philly and pitch a gem? I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but I think he can pitch a good game. I do. Like I said, I don't trust this Phillies lineup at all against righties without those 2 guys. Now, when we get to the bullpen matchup, no question Phillies have the edge here. On the last 30 days, they're a top 5 bullpen. They're a top 5 bullpen on the season. Dodgers are also a top 5 bullpen on the season, but haven't been performing at that level as of late. In the last 30 days, this is more of an average bullpen, so edge definitely goes to the Phillies here, but offensively against bullpens, edge goes to the Dodgers. In fact, in the last 7 days, this is a top 10 lineup. In the late innings, Phillies are a bottom 10 lineup. So as far as the battle in the late innings, I'd say it's about even. As far as betting this game, look, I don't love the Dodgers right now, but at this price, this is kind of a no-brainer for me. And when I say no-brainer, I don't mean the bet's definitely going to hit or anything, not a lock or anything like that. I just meant the decision was easy. I mean, we saw it clear as day. In the last 7 days, the Phillies are 28th in baseball against right-handed pitching. I don't trust this lineup to get to right-handed starters without those 2 guys in it. So I think Bobby Miller's going to pitch a great game here. And it's not that I think Zach Wheeler's going to get tagged up, but I do expect the Dodgers to be able to get at least 1 or 2 off him, which should be enough. I mean, it should be a low-scoring game. Getting the Dodgers at plus money against a bottom 5 lineup against righties right now. So I got the Dodgers. I already bet it. I think I got it at plus 122. Next up, we got the Yanks down in Tampa. Rays are dogs at home here, plus 105. Total sitting down at 8. We got Carlos Rodon on the mound for the Yanks. Ryan Pepiot pitching for the Rays. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got a pretty solid lean on, well, slight lean on Tampa. 3.14 to 2.49 after 5 innings. Final score 5.43 to 4.75. So before we get into this matchup, let's look at some ROI numbers. Yanks have been more profitable than the Rays this year, but it's starting to even out. On the season, the Yanks are down to a plus 1.4% ROI. Look at the last 10 games, the last 5 games. Obviously, as I'm sure you've heard, the Yanks have been slumping. Rays minus 8.9% on the season. We look at their numbers at home, minus 13.9%. So they haven't been profitable at home in Tampa. But in the last 10 games, they have been turning a small profit. Meanwhile, the Yankees on the road, last 10 games, minus 51.6%. So the Yankees have been having all kinds of problems, which is a perfect segue into the numbers because we're going to start with the Yankees bats. In the last 7 days, the Yankees are a bottom 10 lineup. 22nd in WRC plus, 21st in OPS, 21st in WOBA. Now, their numbers on the road look fine. On the season, this is a top 5 road lineup. Last 30 days, top 10 road lineup. So the Yankees have been fine on the road. And when we get to their numbers against righties, I mean, these look pretty solid too. They're not amazing. In the last 30 days, 10th, 12th, and 12th. Last 7 days, 13th, 12th, and 13th. So the numbers against righties don't look bad. And if you look at their numbers against righty starters, I mean, again, they don't look that bad. The last 4 righty starters to pitch against the Yankees, 4.76 ERA and a 1.53 WHIP. Last 12 righty starters looking about the same. So, I mean, those aren't terrible looking numbers. But when you pull up the game logs, it's not great looking. I mean, they got to Winkowski, got to Tanner Houck, didn't really get to Frankie Montas, didn't really get to Graham Ashcraft. They crushed Kevin Gausman, but then didn't get to Chris Bassett at all, didn't get to Jose Barrios at all. And keep in mind, this graphic is 1 day old. Because missing from the top of this graphic is Sunday Night Baseball against Cutter Crawford. He absolutely blanked the Yankees. So if you threw that game log in with the rest of these, it wouldn't look good. There's a lot of righty starters on here that shouldn't be pitching gems against the Yankees that are actually, I mean, Graham Ashcraft should not be shutting the Yankees lineup down, and he pitched pretty well. Same goes for Frankie Montas. Well, Frankie Montas has been pitching pretty well, but as a whole, Yankees so-so against righty starters, which brings us to Ryan Pepiot. Tough guy to go to read on. I mean, in the last 6 starts, he's got a 5.22 ERA, 1.40 WHIP. In the last 3 starts, 3.55 ERA and a 1.34 WHIP, but expected FIP 5.52 indicates he's had some good luck. If you look at his numbers at home, they look good. In his last 7 home starts, 3.86 ERA, 1.06 WHIP. His last 3 home starts, 3.71 and an 0.94. So his numbers at home look pretty good. If you look at his game logs, I mean, pretty substantial home away here. Really struggled on the road in Kansas City, threw a gem at home against Seattle. Really struggled on the road in Pittsburgh. Really struggled on the road in Atlanta. Then at home against Baltimore, he got hit up, but it's Baltimore. Pitched decent on the road in Miami. Pitched a great game at home against Oakland. So, I mean, tough to find any sort of pattern here. These are his last 3 home starts. 2 of them were good, and the only bad start at home on this chart was Baltimore. So I guess that's a plus to take away for Pepiot. Now, one thing I don't like for him here is he struggles against lefty bats. 3.35 WOBA and a 1.35 WHIP, much higher than his numbers against righties. And normally, if this was a month ago, I'd say that's okay because the Yankees are a righty-heavy lineup. But with Stanton out, you got Ben Rice batting leadoff. This Yankees lineup has a lot of lefties in it. 3 of their first 4 hitters are lefties. There's 5 lefties projected to be in the lineup total. So I don't like that for Pepiot. 3.35 WOBA against lefties against the Yanks right now. Also, he's heavily reliant on the 4-seam fastball. Yankees, despite their struggles, still a top 10 lineup against the fastball in the last 30 days. His other 2 pitches, though, slider and changeup, Yankees are 18th and 21st against those 2 pitches. Overall, I think on paper, the Yankees should be able to get to Pepiot and score some runs on him, but I don't know if I could trust this Yankees lineup right now. I mean, keep in mind the numbers are going to be skewed. They scored 14 runs in that one game against Boston. It might hide a little bit of their other struggles. I don't trust this Yankee lineup right now. So Pepiot's been good in 2 of his last 3 home starts. Maybe he pitches well here. On the other side, we got the Tampa bats looking pretty average, maybe slightly below average. In the last 30 days, 13th, 18th, and 17th. So pretty middle of the pack. As far as their numbers at home, finally trending in the right direction. As I'm sure you know, one of the worst home lineups in baseball this year. In the last 30 days, 27th, 29th, and 29th. But if you look at the last 14 days, maybe trending upwards. So that's a good sign for Tampa. Now, when we get to their numbers against lefties, these are crazy. So in the last 30 days, this is a top 10 lineup against lefties. Same goes for the last 14 days, the last 7 days. So these numbers look great, right? But then you look at their numbers against lefty starters specifically. Almost doesn't make sense. The last 6 lefty starters to pitch against the Rays, 2.57 ERA and a 1.14 whip. What? And you pull up the game logs, I mean, they're not getting to anyone. They got to Patrick Corbin, and then they got to Braxton Garrett all the way back on June 5th. They haven't seen a ton of lefty starters, but they've been murdering lefties out of the bullpen. So their numbers against left-handed pitching look good recently, but then you look at the game logs of the lefty starters they've seen. I mean, they didn't get to Andrew Heaney at all, 5 1/3 shutout. Didn't get to Mitchell Parker, didn't get to Chris Sale, didn't get to Justin Steele at all. Didn't really get to Cole Irvin. So I don't know. The numbers against left-handed pitching look great for the Rays. Don't have a ton of faith in them, but at least they're showing signs of life. How about that? Then we get to Carlos Rodon, and his season is just falling apart, man. His last 4 starts, he's got a 10.89 ERA, 2.05 whip. Definitely not what we were seeing from Carlos Rodon earlier in the season. As far as his numbers on the road, his last 7 road starts, he's now got a 5.54 ERA. His last 2 road starts, 11.70 and 2.10. So Carlos Rodon definitely trending in the wrong direction here. Here are his game logs, and I mean, I guess he was okay at home against the Reds, but the Reds have been pretty awful hitting the ball, period, let alone hitting lefty starters. I mean, before that, got crushed by Toronto, got crushed by Atlanta, got crushed by Boston. Hard to have a ton of faith in Carlos Rodon right now. Also, he's definitely struggled more against righty bats. 342 WOBA against righties compared to a 303 against lefties. Tampa projected to have 9 consecutive righties in the lineup. So you definitely don't like that for Rodon. Now, one thing you can point out for Rodon is he's very reliant on the four-seam fastball. He throws it over 50% of the time, and the Rays have really been struggling against fastballs, but his secondary pitches are the slider and the changeup. Tampa is top 10 against both those pitches. So at this point in the handicap, I was pretty 50-50 about my thoughts on Carlos Rodon, but then I looked at his history against Tampa. His last 3 starts against Tampa, he's 0-2 with a 6.75 ERA and a whip above 2. That is ugly. And the current Rays bats, lifetime 46 plate appearances, 876 OPS. So they have nice lifetime numbers against Rodon. So I think we can count on Tampa to get to him. I think the Rays are going to score runs here. As far as the bullpen matchup in this one, I mean, I guess you have to give the edge to the Yankees, but it's tough. I mean, the last 30 days, the Yankees bullpen is 29th in ERA and 29th in WOBA, but the Rays is 28th and 21st. And the last 14 days, the Yankees have been better than the Rays. So I'll give the slight bullpen edge to the Yankees. And as far as offensively against bullpens, pretty even. Maybe a slight edge towards Tampa recently, but pretty even. So in the late innings, maybe a slight edge towards the Yankees, but I'll call it a wash. As far as betting this one, I mean, it feels really coin flippy. I feel like on paper, the Yankees should be the move, but if you solely look at recent production, how could you lay juice on the road with the Yankees right now? I mean, they're 5-15 in their last 20 games. How could you trust that team? They have one of the worst records in baseball recently. So I'd have to lean towards Tampa. I haven't bet this game yet or anything. I don't know if I actually will. Not loving it. It'll be raise or pass here. If you're looking for a player prop, though, Jose Siri. Look at his barrel rate against Carlos Rodon's pitch mix. He's been ice cold recently, but as we just talked about before, Tampa hasn't seen much left-handed pitching. So now that he finally gets to see a lefty who has a pitch mix he's performed really well against, I think it's a nice bounce back for Jose Siri. So maybe a Jose Siri home run prop as well. Next up, we got Colorado at Cincinnati. Reds are pretty heavily favored at home here, -170. Total sitting at 8.5 or 9, depending on your sports book. We got Cal Quantrill pitching for the Rockies. Frankie Montas is on the mound for Cincinnati. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And we actually got to lean on the Rockies through 5 innings, 2.65 to 2.41. But we got to lean on the Reds' final score, 4.48 to 4.18. So before we get into this matchup, let's look at some ROI numbers. These two teams pretty close. Reds have been slightly more profitable, -10.1% on the season for the Rockies, -6% for the Reds. Last 10 games, both of these teams have been turning a profit, though, +19.6% to +17.4% in the last 10. But in this location, the Reds have been terrible at home, -18.8% on the season, and the Rockies have been terrible on the road, -21% ROI on the season. So the Rockies have been terrible on the road this year. Reds have been terrible at home. So let's get into the numbers. Rockies bats, I mean, in the last 30 days, they're 13th in OPS, but obviously those numbers are skewed because they play in Coors Field. If you look at WRC Plus, which is an adjusted metric that takes into account ballpark, they're 27th in the last 14 days, one of the worst lineups in baseball. We look at their numbers on the road, and we already know this is one of the worst, if not the worst, road lineup in baseball. On the season, 29th, 29th, 29th. Last 30 days, bottom 3 lineup on the road in baseball. As far as their numbers against righties, I mean, there is maybe a light at the end of the tunnel here. In the last 14 days, they're one of the worst lineups in baseball against righties, but look at the last 7 days, 10th, 9th, and 9th. So, okay, I mean, it's 7 days. Can't really draw anything from that, but the Rockies have been hitting. And if you look at their numbers against righty starters, last 7 righty starters to pitch against the Rockies, 3.46 ERA, 0.98 WHIP. Last 2, 4.50 and 1.33. Nothing really to take away there. Here are the game logs. They did get to Tobias Myers and Bryce Wilson. Got to give them that, but the other 5 righty starters on this list, they did not get to. Seth Lugo, Colin Rea, Jonathan Cannon, Andrew Thorpe, Spencer Arrighetti, and these are not exactly Cy Young candidates. Seth Lugo's having a great season. Other than that, those are not righties that should be blanking you, and they had no problems pitching against the Rockies. So as a whole, I don't think this lineup is very good. I don't care what the numbers say in the last 7 days, which brings us to Frankie Montas. And why do we start with the fact that he blanked this team in Coors Field? Back on June 4th, Frankie Montas went into Coors Field, 7 shutout innings, just 1 hit. I should know. I had the over in that game. Wasn't even close. Frankie Montas threw an absolute gem, arguably his best start of the season. And Frankie Montas has been pretty good recently. His last 3 starts, 2.65 ERA, 1.06 WHIP. Now, the 4.76 expected FIP indicates that he may have had some good luck, but still, Frankie Montas has definitely been pitching well. Now, if you pull up his home numbers, this looks pretty shaky. His last 2 home starts, 7.36 ERA. His last 5 home starts, 4.97 ERA. So definitely don't love the look of that for Frankie Montas. But then you pull up the game logs. Where are these ugly home starts? I only see one, and it's June 9th against the Cubs. He got crushed. 5 hits, 3 walks, 4 earned runs in just an inning and a third. That's skewing all the numbers here, because if you look at the other 6 starts on his game logs here, they're all solid. Some of them are excellent. Solid start on the road in Yankee Stadium, gem on the road in St. Louis, solid start on the road that's at home versus Boston, solid start on the road in Milwaukee, great start in Colorado, solid start home against St. Louis. So it's really just one bad start that's skewing the numbers here for Frankie Montas. He's been pitching well. As far as righty-lefty splits, he's definitely been having problems with lefty bats this year, no question. 365 WOBA and a 155 WHIP against lefties. Much, much worse than his numbers against righties. And the Rockies do have 5 lefties projected to be in the lineup here, but 3 of them are the 7, 8, and 9 hitters. Nolan Jones, Togley, and Jake Cave. Only 2 of their first 6 hitters are lefties, Charlie Blackmon and Ryan McMahon. So the main pieces of this Rockies lineup are mostly righties. So I'm not too scared of these righty-lefty splits, although it is a concern. As far as his pitch mix, he throws the 4-seam fastball, the splitter, and the cutter. Rockies actually have okay numbers against the splitter and the cutter. They're pretty average. 22nd against the fastball in the last 30 days, though. As a whole, it's one ugly start against the Cubs that are skewing all his numbers. I think Frankie Montas has been pitching pretty well. I think he pitches pretty well here against a Rockies lineup that I don't think is any good. They're certainly bad on the road. So I like the spot for Frankie Montas. On the other side, we got the Reds bats, and brace yourself, this gets ugly. In the last 30 days, this has been one of the worst lineups in baseball, 29th, 28th, and 28th. Same goes for the last 14 days, the last 7 days. Where is the light at the end of the tunnel for the Reds lineup? I'm not seeing it. As far as their numbers at home, just as bad. 29th, 27th, and 26th on the season. Even worse than that in the last 30 days. This lineup just refuses to hit at home. And as far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, just as bad. In the last 30 days against righties, 29th, 27th, and 28th. So in the last 30 days, this is one of the worst lineups in baseball, one of the worst lineups in baseball against righties, and one of the worst lineups in baseball at home. Not a great look for the Reds. Now, if you look at their numbers against righty starters, they actually look okay, which is just crazy. The last 7 righty starters to pitch against the Reds, 5.71 ERA, 1.38 WHIP. So they've actually gotten to a few righty starters here and there. And when you pull up the game logs, it makes it really tough to make a prediction because it's so hot and cold here. Reese Olson blanked this lineup. They got to Marcus Stroman. They got to Luis Gil. Then Lance Lynn, 6 shutout innings, just 3 base runners. Lance Lynn absolutely blanked this team. They got to Sonny Gray, blanked by Andre Palante. They got to Miles Michaelis. I mean, good luck trying to make a prediction with this Reds lineup. It's so hot and cold. They either score 11 runs or 0 runs, which makes it almost impossible to consistently bet. Now, when we pull up Cal Quantrill's recent numbers, they don't look great. 5.48 ERA and a 1.59 WHIP in his last 4 starts, but his numbers on the road look good. His last 7 road starts, so 7, this is a solid sample size, 2.68 ERA, 1.12 WHIP. His last 3 road starts, 2.76 and a 1.10. And here are his game logs, and yeah, it's definitely a little concerning to look at his last 4 starts. He struggled against the Dodgers, but okay, it's the Dodgers. Since then, Nats, a home start against the Nats. I mean, he wasn't terrible, but it's not great. He struggled on the road in Chicago against the White Sox, struggled against the Brewers. So it's been a while since we've seen Cal Quantrill throw a great game. But if you rewind back to early June, 6 shutout innings on the road in Minnesota, 5 shutout innings on the road in St. Louis. So take out that one White Sox blow up, and his 2 road starts before that were gems. As far as his righty-lefty splits, there's really nothing to take away here. Maybe slightly worse against righty bats, but the Reds lineup is pretty split. They're going to have 5 righties and 4 lefties, so nothing to take away there. I like the look of his pitch mix, though. His 2 main pitches, the sinker and the splitter, Reds are bottom 10 in baseball against both those pitches in the last 30 days. So I like the look of that. As far as making a prediction on this side, I know Cal Quantrill's been shaky, and it's been some time since we've seen him throw a good start, but this Reds lineup at home has to be a fade for me. I just recently backed him against Skubal. I thought it was a sharp move, took a loss. I don't have any faith in this lineup. I mean, until they show me something, I'm fading them. So I expect Cal Quantrill to pitch a good game here. Bullpen matchup, got to give the edge to the Reds. On the last 30 days, the Reds are a borderline top 10 bullpen. The Rockies are arguably the worst in baseball. Now, if you look at the last 14 days, you can see it's actually pretty close. Reds bullpen has been trending in the wrong direction, and the Rockies bullpen has been on the come up slightly. But still, no question, we know the Reds have the much better bullpen here. Offensively against bullpens, though, the edge goes to the Rockies, and not because they've been good. It's because the Reds lineup in the late innings has been dead. In fact, in the last 30 days, this has been the worst lineup in baseball getting to opponent bullpens. So overall, the matchup in the late innings is pretty even. The Reds have the better bullpen, but the Rockies offense has done a much better job scoring runs in the late innings, so it's pretty even. As far as betting this game, I went right back to the well. I cashed on the under in this game last night, went right back to it. I already bet it, got it at 8.5. I like both starting pitchers to pitch well. The Rockies offense on the road is one of the worst in baseball. The Reds offense at home, one of the worst in baseball. So got it at 8.5, in on the under. Next up, we got Nats, Mets. Mets are short home favorites here, minus 135. Total sitting at 8.5. It's the same exact matchup, though. It's Jake Irvin against Jose Quintana again. We just saw this matchup on the 4th of July. Nats won the game 1-0. There was no offense throughout the whole thing. I don't really know what to expect, so a very slim chance I'm betting this game. I'm going to skip it for now. We'll talk about it on the live show, but this is a pass for now, which brings us to Oakland at Boston. Red Sox are favored at home here, minus 190. Total sitting up at 9.5. There's even some 10s open as well. We got Joey Estes pitching for the A's. Brian Bayo is on the mound for the Bo Sox. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got a very slight lean on Boston through 5 innings, 3.31 to 3.25. Slight lean on Boston final score as well, 5.71 to 5.16. So before we get into this one, let's take a look at some ROI numbers. Boston has been more profitable on the year, plus 5.7% ROI this season. Oakland back at minus 10.5%. In the last 10 games, though, both of the teams have been profitable, plus 8.3% for Oakland, plus 7.8% for Boston. So both of these teams have been making money. But let's get into the numbers here. We'll start with Oakland's bats, and check this out. Now, 7 days is a crazy small sample size, but Oakland is a top 5 lineup in the last 7 days. 3rd in WRC+, 3rd in OPS, 3rd in WOBA. Let's give them some credit. That being said, it was a homestand. It was a 6-game homestand because their numbers on the road look like shit. On the season, this is a bottom 5 road lineup. On the last 30 days, this is a bottom 10 road lineup. So maybe the bats are about to come back down to earth now that they're going back out on the road. As far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, in the last 14 days, this is a bottom 10 lineup versus righties, but look at the last 7 days. On this homestand again, 12th, 13th, and 12th. So the Oakland bats definitely came alive a little bit on that 6-game homestand. As far as righty starters, though, I mean, the last 5 righty starters to pitch against Oakland, 3.46 ERA and an 0.96 WHIP. So it's not like they've really been getting to righty starters. And if you pull up the game logs, I mean, it's really just Jose Soriano. 4 earned runs, 4 base runners. They got him out of the game pretty quickly. He only went 4 innings. It's important to take note that was his first start back from injury, though. He had missed 3 weeks before that with an abdominal injury. Other than that, I mean, they didn't get to Albert Suarez, didn't get to Brandon Pfaadt, didn't get to Zach Gallen. They got to Slate Ciccone back on June 28th. Before that, didn't get to Griffin Canning and didn't get to Pablo Lopez. So as a whole, I think it's safe to say that Oakland is not getting to righty starters consistently. But will there be an exception for Brayan Bello? I mean, he's made 2 career starts against Oakland and they weren't good. He's 0-1 with an even 10 ERA and a 144 whip against the A's lifetime. So he's struggled with this team in his young career, and he's struggling this year. On the season, he's got a 5.19 ERA and a 145 whip. Last 6 starts, 6.75 ERA, 186 whip. Last 2 starts, even worse than that. He's been even worse than that at home. In his last 4 home starts, he's got an 8.35 ERA and a 185 whip. So he's really struggled this season, really struggled at home in Fenway. And you can see here his game logs. I mean, there are a couple decent starts on there. When I say a couple, I mean literally 2. On the road in Miami, he pitched pretty well. Pitched into the 7th inning, just 1 earned run, 8 base runners. And then June 19th, there's a decent start on the road in Toronto. Not good, just decent. 9 base runners in 6 innings pitch isn't really great. Other than that, Bello's been a pitching machine this year. He's really having a hard time. And it gets even worse when you take into consideration the lineups he's pitching against. I mean, look at these game logs. The Marlins, the Blue Jays twice. The Yankees I'll give you, but even the Yankees aren't the same. Back on June 14th, I believe the Yankees were still hitting though, so we'll give them a pass for that one. The White Sox, the Tigers, the Orioles are solid. So 5 of these teams on his game logs are bottom 10 lineups versus righties. So this is unacceptable. He's not pitching well. That being said, this might be a really nice spot for Bello. He's got much better numbers against righty bats this year. 321 WOBA and a 135 whip against righties. As you can see, he's struggling against lefty bats. Oakland's definitely a righty-heavy lineup. 6 projected righties in the lineup for Oakland, so that's a good look for Bello. As far as his pitch mix, he throws the sinker, the changeup, and the slider. Oakland's terrible against the changeup, the worst lineup in baseball, but they're actually top 10 against the sinker and the slider. So probably a solid look for Oakland there. As a whole, I know the A's have been hitting over the last week, but a lot of that was against lefty starters, and all of it was at home. Oakland has never been a lineup I trust on the road. I actually like this spot for Bello to pitch well against a bunch of righties. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I expect Brayan Bello to pitch a solid game here. On the other side, we got the Red Sox bats, and I mean, in the last 30 days, they're still a top 10 lineup, 10th, 9th, and 9th, but last 14 days, last 7 days indicate that the Boston bats are definitely trending in the wrong direction. As far as their numbers at home, I mean, they were getting hot at Fenway for a while, but again, they seem to be trending the wrong way here. Last 30 days numbers look good. Last 14 days, not so much, even though that's a very small sample size. Their numbers against right-handed pitching still look great, though. Last 30 days, top 10. Same goes to the last 14 days, the last 7 days. But when you take a look at their numbers against righty starters, it's not overly impressive. The last 5 righty starters to pitch against Boston, 4.12 ERA and a 147 whip. So as a whole, not really getting to righty starters. And I was talking about this on the live show. I think Boston's lineup is trending in the wrong direction. And if we pull up the game logs, they got to Garrett Cole, got to Matt Waldron. But Garrett Cole just returning from a long-term injury. Matt Waldron throws a knuckleball. Other than that, I mean, didn't get to Michael King at all. Didn't really get to Randy Vasquez. They should have definitely scored runs there. Didn't get to Gausman, and everybody's getting to Gausman this year. Didn't get to Chris Bassett. So as a whole, I don't really trust this Red Sox lineup against righties right now. And you know what? Joey Estes has been pretty good. In his last 2 starts, he's got a 123 ERA and an 075 whip. On the season, 439 and 112. These aren't bad numbers. The problem is he's been much better at home. You can see his numbers on the road, definitely not the same. Even 7 ERA, 156 whip, 493 expected FIP on the road. And here are his splits, and they're pretty significant. At home, he's got a 191 ERA and an 071 whip. So at home in Oakland, he's been excellent. On the road, he's been anything but excellent. So the fact that this game's in Fenway, definitely a bit of a concern for Joey Estes. Now, when we take a look at his game logs, it becomes pretty clear that his road numbers are getting skewed by 2 bad road starts. Because if you look at his June 26th road start against the Angels, that's solid. 5 2/3 innings pitched, just 5 base runners, 2 earned runs. That's a great road start there. He got crushed on June 16th in Minnesota by the Twins, and he got crushed on June 10th in San Diego by the Padres. But look at the road start before that. May 29th in Tampa, he pitched a great game. So I know the splits are pretty significant, but you got to keep in mind he's only made 6 road starts. 2 of them he got crushed. So his numbers are going to be pretty skewed. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I trust this dude on the road in Fenway. I'm just saying those crazy home away splits, we might be able to throw them out to some extent. Now, these splits here are interesting. You can see Joey Estes has really struggled when he's seen good lineups. Against top 10 lineups versus righties this year, 17 and a third innings pitched, 9.87 ERA, 2.13 whip. That's terrible. He's been absolutely dominant against bottom 10 lineups, which begs the question, do you consider Boston a top 10 lineup right now? Because if you look at some numbers, the answer would be yes. If you go by the last 30 days, the answer would be yes. If you go by the last 14 days, last 7 days, last handful of righty starters to pitch against the Red Sox, I think the answer is no. But just when I thought it looked like a great spot for Joey Estes, then we look at his righty-lefty splits, and it's terrifying. I mean, he struggles against lefty bats. 366 WOBA, 150 whip. Boston is the last lineup you want to be struggling against lefty bats when you pitch against. Well, actually, Cleveland first, Boston second. Extremely lefty-heavy lineup. You can see 6 lefties projected to be in the lineup, including 3 of their first 4 hitters, 6 of their first 8 hitters. I mean, very lefty-heavy lineup. So the fact that Joey Estes struggles against lefties is a nightmare here. Now, I do like that Boston's been struggling to hit the fastball because he's very reliant on the four-seam fastball. But unfortunately, I just can't look past those righty-lefty splits for Estes. Combine that with the fact that he struggles on the road. Even though I think those splits are exaggerated, it's still a concern. I think we can count on the Red Sox to get to him. Even though I'm looking for a spot to fade this Boston lineup, I just don't think this is it. As far as the bullpen matchup, got to give the edge to Boston here. I mean, in the last 30 days, Boston's bullpen 9th in ERA, 10th in WOBA. Oakland down in the bottom 10, but in the last 14 days, Boston's in the bottom 10 as well. So I guess slight edge to Boston in the bullpen department, but let's not forget that Oakland's bullpen was really good about a month and a half ago. So I think it's closer than you would think. And offensively against bullpens, edge kind of goes to Oakland. The last 7 days, I mean, granted, it's a 6-game homestand where they were hitting, but they've been hitting. I mean, this lineup's been scoring runs in the late innings, and in the last 7 days, Boston hasn't. So as far as the battle in the late innings, I think it might be even here. As far as betting this game, I guess I'd have to go Boston -1.5. I mean, Joey Estes on the road against a bunch of lefties. It's just terrifying. I don't know if I actually end up betting that. I probably won't, but it would be Boston -1.5 or pass. I might have a player prop for you in this one, though. So check it out. Let's go over to Outlier. Insight type player, games, Red Sox, Athletics at Red Sox. Let's change the odds from -135 and up. There we go. Then let's go ahead and scroll on down. Where's Devers? Devers. There it is. Rafael Devers has exceeded 2.5 hits, runs, and RBIs in 6 of his last 7 games at home, averaging 4 HRRs per game in that span. So let's go ahead and click on that. Under key matchup stats, you can see Devers much better against right-handed pitching. Joey Estes much worse against lefties, as we already covered earlier in the video. And then to take it a step further, look at Devers' numbers against Estes' pitch mix here. 479 expected WOBA and a 12.7% barrel rate. So this is a beautiful matchup for Rafael Devers. I'm sure this is going to be super expensive, but maybe a Devers over 2.5 HRR, Devers home run prop. I think it's a good spot for that. So I like the spot for Devers if you're looking to play a prop. By the way, if you're interested in trying that website out, Outlier, the one you just saw me using, link is in the description of this video. So if you want to try out Outlier, head down to the description and click that link. Next up, we got Kansas City on the road in St. Louis. Cards are very short home favorites here, -120. Total sitting at 8. We got Michael Wacha pitching for the Royals, Andre Palante pitching for the Cards. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. We're pretty much even after 5 innings. A very slight lean on the Royals, 2.46 to 2.4. Very slight lean on the Cardinals' final score, 4.85 to 4.34. So let's get into this one, and we'll start with the Kansas City bats. And I mean, good luck. This lineup is very unpredictable. I mean, in the last 30 days, they're a bottom 5 lineup, arguably a bottom 3 lineup in baseball. 28th in WRC+, 27th in OPS, 27th in WOBA. But about 2 weeks ago, it looked like the Royals were heating up again, only for them, I don't even know. In the last 7 days, they're back to being close to a bottom 10 lineup. As far as their numbers on the road, in the last 30 days, one of the worst road lineups in baseball. Same goes for the full season. They did score some runs on the road very recently, but as a whole, the Royals on the road have been a fade all year. And their numbers against right-handed pitching, again, like, good luck trying to figure this out. This has been a bad lineup in the last 30 days, but there was a very small section in there where they crushed Tristan McKenzie and they crushed Roddery Munoz, and it looked like the Royals were getting back on track, only for them to fall off again. And then they recently seem like they're getting back on track again. We'll see. I'll show you. I'll pull up the game logs and show you what I'm talking about. But in the last 7 days, it's a borderline bottom 10 lineup. But if you look at their numbers against righty starters, they're not bad here. 5.64 ERA and a 1.39 WHIP in the last 5 righty starters to pitch against them. But here are the game logs, and good luck trying to figure this out, man. I mean, they crushed Zach Eflin, 5 earned runs in 5 innings, got to Ryan Pepio, but got absolutely blanked by Zach Littell, couldn't touch Tanner Bybee, absolutely murdered Tristan McKenzie before that, then couldn't touch Ben Lively, couldn't touch Yanni Chirinos. So I really don't know what to make of this. I mean, personally, I don't trust this Royals lineup. Certainly don't trust them on the road. I mean, look at the quality of starters on this list. These are not all-stars. I mean, Zach Eflin's pretty good. Tanner Bybee's having a good year, but I mean, Pepio, Littell, McKenzie, Lively's pitching pretty well too. Yanni Chirinos. I don't think this Royals lineup is a lineup we can blindly trust right now. And you know what? Andre Palante's been pitching pretty well, man. In his last 5 starts, so decent sample size, 2.42 ERA and a 1.19 WHIP. So Palante's been pitching. Now, if you look at his home numbers, last 3 home starts, 2.87 ERA, 1.34 WHIP. It might look he's been struggling at home in St. Louis, but if you look at the game logs, it's really just one start that's badly skewing the numbers here. The Giants hit him up. And that June 20th, that was right in the middle of the Giants' heat wave against righties. They were crushing every righty starter. Other than that, I mean, 5 1/3 shutout innings against Cincinnati at home. He also pitched a gem against Colorado at home. Yes, a couple bad lineups, but I think the Royals on the road are a bad lineup. Also, I mean, gem on the road in Pittsburgh. He pitched a great game in Cincinnati back on May 29th. Look, I'm not trying to say Andre Palante is a great starting pitcher, but he's definitely been pitching well. Let's give him some credit. He's got dominant numbers against lefty bats, too. 237 WOBA and an even 1 WHIP against lefties. So he's been very good against lefty bats. Not so much against righties. Royals projected to have 5 lefties in the lineup, so that's a positive thing. It does worry me that 2 of the righties in the Royals lineup are 2 of their most important bats, though. Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvador Perez. So that's definitely a little bit concerning. There's only 4 righties in the lineup, so that's a positive, but 2 of them are arguably their 2 most important pieces. Another positive for Palante is he's heavily reliant on the 4-seam fastball. He throws it 51.6% of the time. Royals are the worst lineup in baseball in the last 30 days hitting the 4-seam fastball. So as a whole on this side, I'm down to fade these Royals bats right now, especially on the road. Palante's been pretty good. I think he pitches a good game here. On the other side, we got the St. Louis bats in the last 30 days looking like a pretty average lineup. Last 7 days climbing into the top 10, though, 9th, 10th, and 9th. As far as their numbers at home, not great, though. In the last 30 days, this is borderline bottom 10 lineup at home. Last 14 days, even worse than that. So they've actually done a better job hitting on the road. But as far as getting to ready starters, it looks like they're heating up. In the last 7 days, this has been a top 7 lineup against righties. But it's interesting because they just played a series against Washington where they saw all lefties. So if you actually look at the righty starters, last 5 righty starters to pitch against Cardinals, 3.04 ERA and a 1.12 WHIP. So yeah, the Cardinals have really nice numbers against right-handed pitching in the last 7 days, but a lot of that is coming against bullpen arms because when you pull up the game logs, they're not really getting to righty starters. They got to Mitch Keller. I mean, crush Mitch Keller. But they didn't get to Jared Jones, didn't really get to Hunter Green, didn't get to Carson Spears, Frankie Montas, Reynaldo Lopez. So as a whole, St. Louis not getting to righty starters. They have nice-looking numbers against righties in the last 7 days, but they haven't really seen any righty starters. And Michael Wacha has been pitching well. He's made 3 starts since returning from injury, and in those 3 starts, he's got a 1.65 ERA and a 1.10 WHIP. He's been excellent. I mean, he's really been excellent all season, even before he got hurt. He's been excellent on the road. His last 4 road starts, 2.35 ERA, 0.91 WHIP. He's only made 1 road start since returning from injury. It was in Texas on June 22nd, as you can see here. Threw a great game. Struggled a little bit on June 27th against Cleveland, but it's Cleveland. It's one of the best lineups in baseball against righties, and he held them to 1 run. Pitched into the 6th inning. 9 base runners is not what you want to see, but overall, you'll take that. Threw a gem against the Rays, who have been hitting better. So I have no reason not to trust Michael Wacha. He's been pitching well. I don't love that he struggles against lefty bats. 3.23 WOBA and a 1.28 WHIP. It's not terrible, but there are significant splits there. Cardinals are projected to have 5 lefties in the lineup, but 3 of them are the bottom 3. Nootbaar, Gorman, Siani. As far as the first 6 hitters in the Cardinals lineup, 4 of them are righties. So Cardinals more of a righty-heavy lineup, even though there are 5 lefties in it. So I'm not too concerned about the righty-lefty stuff here for Wacha. Pitch mix-wise, he throws the changeup and the four-seam fastball. Cardinals in the last 30 days against those pitches, 16th and 25th. So I'm down to back Michael Wacha here. I think he pitches a good game against the Cardinals. I also think Palante, like I said, pitches well against the Royals. So it might be looking at a first 5 under in this one. When we get to the bullpens, definitely edge Cardinals, and it's not close. In the last 30 days, the Cardinals are 2nd in ERA, their bullpen, 7th in WOBA. Expected FIP indicates that they've had some really good luck, but still, the Royals bullpen in the last 30 days, arguably bottom 5 in baseball. So no question, Cardinals have the bullpen edge in this one. Offensively against bullpens, it's pretty much even. Both of these lineups have done a pretty good job scoring in the late innings. So Cardinals definitely have the edge in the latter half of the game. As far as betting this game, I do like the under. I just really wish I could get an 8.5. The best I see available is 8. I even see a couple 7.5s open. So actually the way I'd be leaning here, Cardinals team total under 3.5. You can get that at plus 110. That's not a bad price. Keep in mind, Cardinals are just returning from a 7-game road trip with no days off. So it's a pretty terrible spot for the Cardinals. So maybe just fading their lineup specifically in this one. Cardinals team total under 3.5 at plus money, or first 5 under 4.5 at minus 125. So if I was forced to bet this game, I would go one of those 2 ways. As of right now, I don't have a bet down in this one, though. Next up, we got the Twins on the road in Chicago. Twins obviously are favored on the road. The White Sox are sitting at plus 140. Total sitting down at 8. We got Bailey Ober getting the start for the Twins. Eric Fetty pitching for the White Sox. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got a pretty solid lean on Minnesota here. 2.87 to 2.13 after 5 innings. Final score 5.3 to 3.8 Twins. So before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. And obviously, we know the Twins have been much more profitable than the White Sox this year. Chicago is still the least profitable team in baseball, minus 32.8% ROI in the season. Twins sitting around even, minus 1.4%. And same goes for the Twins on the road, minus 2.2%, so just below 0. White Sox have been better at home, but still minus 19.7%. So the White Sox definitely have not been a good team to bet on this year, as I'm sure you know. Let's get into the game. We'll start with the Twins bats, and we're looking at ones across the board. Last 30 days, last 14 days, last 7 days, Twins are first in WRC+, first in OPS, first in WOBA, all ones here. As far as their numbers on the road, looks great. In the last 30 days, Twins are a top 5 lineup on the road as well. So they're hitting on the road, and they're definitely hitting right-handed pitching. All ones again. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. In the last 30 days, they're second in OPS. But other than that, they're first in every metric here. Last 30, last 14, last 7 against right-handed pitching. The last 7 righty starters to pitch against the Twins, 8.33 ERA and a 163 whip. The last 2, 14.90 and a 259 whip. So, yeah, they're getting to righty starters. Now, when you pull up the game logs, though, they absolutely crushed Hunter Brown, who had been dealing. They crushed Kenta Maeda. The Seattle guys were able to pitch decent games against the Twins. Luis Castillo, Bryce Miller, Logan Gilbert. So that is something to take away. I mean, Seattle probably has the best starting rotation in Major League Baseball right now. They were able to pitch well against this Twins lineup. But then before that, they crushed Ryan Nelson. They got to Brandon Pfaadt. So we know the Twins have been hitting. The Twins have definitely been getting to righty starters, but it's not unfathomable that a righty starter could pitch a good game against the Twins, because we saw the guys from Seattle do it. Which brings us to Eric Fetty, and speaking of pitching a good game against the Twins, he already did. Back on April 23rd of this year, 6 innings pitched, just 1 run, 11 Ks, just 3 hits. He pitched a great game against the Twins earlier this season. Now, that was back in April, but still. Eric Fetty having a great season, by the way. 3.13 ERA and a 1.13 whip. Doesn't really get talked about because he plays for the White Sox, but he hasn't really slowed down. Last 6 starts, numbers looking about the same as that. His numbers at home are even better than that. Eric Fetty at home in Chicago this year is a 1.64 ERA and an 0.91 whip. So he's been excellent in his home starts, and here are his game logs. Show me the bad starts here. I mean, pitch well on the road in Cleveland. We know Cleveland's been crushing righties this year, even though they've cooled off a bit. Pitched a solid game against the Dodgers. They scored 4 earned runs, but 6 innings pitched, just 6 base runners. Pitched a great game in Detroit, solid game in Arizona, blanked the Mariners, pitched a solid game against the Cubs. Eric Fedde's been dealing. He's definitely been a great starting pitcher this year. I am a little worried about this, though. He struggled when he's seen good lineups. Against top 10 lineups this year, he's thrown 27 2/3 innings pitched, 4.55 ERA, and a 1.34 WHIP. So he hasn't gotten absolutely smoked by good lineups, but the production definitely dips a bit. Twins, as we know right now, most definitely a top 10 lineup. Nothing really to take away here from his righty-lefty splits. I mean, I guess he struggles a little bit more against lefty bats, but not really. 295 WOBA, 121 WHIP. And the Twins are a pretty split lineup anyway. 5 lefties and 4 righties. So really nothing to take away there. As far as his pitch mix, he throws 4 pitches: sinker, cutter, slider, changeup. Twins have nice hitting numbers against all of them: 5th, 13th, 3rd, and 7th in the last 30 days. So look, it's the Twins. It's one of the hottest lineups in baseball. I'm not going to sit here and give a prediction out that the Twins are going to get blanked, but I like Fedde a lot, and I like him at home, so I don't think it's crazy to think Eric Fedde throws a decent game here. I think he will. We saw the Seattle guys do it. I think Eric Fedde will pitch well here. On the other side, we got the White Sox bats, and definitely performing at a better level than we've become accustomed to. I'll say that. On the last 7 days, the White Sox are an average lineup, which by Chicago White Sox standards, you'll take that. That's elite. Numbers at home don't look good, though. This is still the worst home lineup in baseball. Dead last in every category on the season. Last 30 days, bottom 5 home lineup. As far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, though, again, last 7 days, average, which by White Sox standards is excellent. Last 7 righty starters to pitch against the White Sox: 4.69 ERA, 1.21 WHIP. Nothing great there. And when you look at the game logs, look at the names: Yanni Chirinos, Rodri Munoz, Ben Lively, Carlos Carrasco, Cal Quantrill, Dakota Hudson. They've definitely had a bit of a some fortunate scheduling, I'll say, because those are some very hittable pitchers. And if you look at the production, they're not really. Yanni Chirinos, 5 innings pitched, 3 earned runs, 7 base runners. Is that a successful outing for the White Sox bats? It's Chirinos. Rodri Munoz, they scored 2 runs on him in 4 innings, but it's Rodri Munoz. Ben Lively pitched a great game. Carlos Carrasco pitched a great game against them. Cal Quantrill, Dakota Hudson. So what I'm saying is, yeah, the White Sox bats are performing better, and you can't take that away from them, but by no means am I saying this is a lineup we can trust, because they've seen some easy righty starters, and now they're going to be matched up against Bailey Ober, who, by the way, has excellent numbers against the White Sox. In his last 6 starts against Chicago, he's 3-0 with a 2.88 ERA, 0.79 WHIP, so he's had 0 problems pitching against this team. He's also been throwing really well recently. In his last 6 starts, he's got a 2.92 ERA, 1.08 WHIP. His last 3 starts, even better than that, 1.71 and 0.76. He's been dealing on the road. In his last 2 road starts, he's got a 1.80 ERA and an 0.60 WHIP. Here are his game logs, and yeah, you can point at the recent opponents: Detroit, Seattle, Oakland. You can point at those 4 games and be like, oh, well, that's why his recent numbers look so good. He's pitched against trash lineups. Well, what do you think the White Sox are, though? So it's not like the White Sox break the mold. He's been dominant against bad lineups, as we see in these game logs, and the White Sox are a bad lineup. And when we pull up the splits, it kind of confirms that. Against bottom 10 lineups this year, he's thrown 67 1/3 innings pitched. So Bailey Ober, we will find a good opportunity to fade this guy. He's pitched against a lot of bad lineups, but this can't be it, because the White Sox are also a bad lineup. Now, if you are looking to back the White Sox here, I do have something for you. Bailey Ober struggling against righty bats. 3.27 WOBA and a 1.23 WHIP. He's definitely much better against lefties. The reason I bring that up is the White Sox are a very righty-heavy lineup. 7 righties projected to be in the lineup for the White Sox here, so that's not a good look for Bailey Ober. If you're looking to back the White Sox, you definitely like the look of that. But the pitch mix numbers, throws the 4-seam fastball, the changeup, and the cutter. White Sox 26th, 28th, and 18th against those 3 pitches. So, like I said, we'll find an opportunity to fade Bailey Ober, but this can't be it. I actually think the White Sox lineup might be a little bit overvalued based on the recent pitchers they've seen, so Bailey Ober should be fine here. As far as the bullpen matchup, obviously we know the Twins have the better bullpen here, but let's give the White Sox some credit. The bullpen's done a good job. On the last 30 days, White Sox are a borderline top 10 bullpen, so maybe a little closer, the bullpen matchup, than you would expect, but offensively against bullpens, there's no discussion. It's the Twins by a mile. They've been a top 5, even top 3 lineup in late innings, and the White Sox have not. They've been closer to bottom 10. As far as betting this one, this is another game where I like the under. I like both starting pitchers to deal. The problem is, look at the bullpen usage we're looking at in this one. So Minnesota, Duran's thrown on back-to-back nights. First of all, they went into extra innings. They used their entire bullpen earlier tonight. Duran's thrown on back-to-back. Griffin Jacks back-to-back. Alcala 3 of the last 4. Theo Bar 2 of the last 3. I mean, they used every single arm they had. Now, most of these arms will be available again, but that's definitely not something I'd like to see if I'm considering taking an under. And on the other side, look at the White Sox bullpen. I mean, there's going to be no Kopech. There's going to be no Brebbia. Jordan Leisure probably not available. I mean, the White Sox bullpen may be in even worse shape. So instead of taking the under, that would point me towards the first 5 under. You can get a 4.5 for like minus 120, minus 125. I don't hate that. But honestly, looking at this White Sox bullpen usage, they are wrecked. It's not even a good bullpen to begin with. Well, they've actually been producing as of late, but missing their 3 main arms, or at least their 2 main arms, this might make me want to take Twins minus 1.5. And it sucks because Fetty at home's been so good, which is why I probably won't bet it. But I think the current state of the White Sox bullpen warrants a fade. So, I mean, the Twins bullpen is so screwed also. So this will probably be a pass. Twins minus 1.5 or pass. Let's say that. That's all the time I have. There's definitely a bunch more games on the board. A few of them have pitching question marks. A few of them I just didn't have time to get to. I went through the whole Braves game. Then they switched from Charlie Morton to Chris Sale earlier today. So I got to redo my notes on that one. But like I said, on the live show, we'll go through every single game, make our final decisions. That's at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern time if you're able to make it. If you want my top bets or top bets from anyone on the staff here, head over to KyleKirms.com and sign up for Sauce Network Plus. Comes with the top bets, access to the Discord, and you get to participate in the weekly betting league. $100 and a trophy to the winner every single week. So if you're interested in any of that, head over to KyleKirms.com and sign up. MLB Tuesday, absolutely loaded night. Remember to bet responsibly, and yeah, talk to you in the Discord. Let's have a good one.